Talk Radio. Now back to Aaron Klein, Investigative Radio.
Vice President Joe Biden, we sit here and talk about Comey, and everybody knows about Comey's involvement in the whole Russia hoax, although we're going to be hearing a lot more about that, I think, in criminal referrals, hopefully. Comey's very arrogant here, claiming that this Inspector General report somehow cleared him. No, it didn't. We read the entire thing from start to finish. He should be ashamed for even believing that. The only thing that happened here is that the report was extensively damning of Comey. Just at the end of the day, after showing how Comey leaked details of a briefing to the FBI, after showing how Comey didn't even inform the FBI after they came to his house that he had more memos in the FBI in his house, and after so many other things, the same Comey who arrogantly gets up and then decides no charges on Clinton, even though clearly there was more to it, but he decides that. Comey let off the hook, ironically, in a very similar fashion to the way he let Hillary off the hook, but Comey is not off the hook. And by the way, this whole thing shows how corrupt he was. It's just that they decided in this one specific instance of the several details here in the Inspector General report, in this specific case, not to go forward with the charges. But let's see about future cases. We'll get to that. But let's rewind a little bit. A bloody Biden, Joe Biden right now, running for president of the United States somehow. I don't know why he believes he can win. I can't wait for the debates. But Joe Biden is all over Russia hoax. In fact, Joe Biden is going to have a lot to answer for on what he knew and what he didn't know and when he knew it about the whole Russia collusion scandal. Now, Attorney General Barr, he's recently made comments indicating very strongly that the initial setup of the whole Russia collusion hoax, we're talking here when the FBI, CIA, and others met in a very small unit, and then information and details were debated inside the White House, actually, Situation Room, where cameras were turned off, people signed non-disclosure forms reportedly to get in. I bet this is where the unmasking took place, but we don't know for sure. Guess who was inside in the early stages of the Russia investigation? And when I say inside, I mean actually inside the room. Joe Biden. Joshua Klein continues with me. He was researching on these issues for Breitbart and this radio show. So, Joshua, let's briefly highlight Joe Biden. Where was he in the beginning, in the early stages of this, where all the crimes probably were being committed by the Obama spy agencies? Let's go to the beginning.
So in the beginning, so this was a very small group of people. It was very highly compartmentalized of who was allowed, especially on this level of information that was being talked about. You mentioned before where the video cameras were shut off. This was, and the National Security Council, they had different meetings. Usually people were able to see the participants and the audio. All that was blacked out when they were discussing this types of information. So it was, as I mentioned before, it was a very small group. So apparently Biden was, lobbying to be, he wanted in on this. He wanted to know what was going on, and he succeeded. He was allowed to be officially into this small group of dictators that were planning a coup, or not even a coup, actually. At that point, they were planning they were spying on Trump's campaign. So he was involved in this. He lobbied to be a part of this. So that's one aspect. We know definitively that Biden was definitely involved. And then a separate aspect is another person by the name of Colin, I believe his name was Colin Call, who was Biden's national security advisor. So he had him literally participating in these, as I mentioned, compartmentalized, meetings. They're called, principal meetings, and they take place at the White House. So he actually had his this person was in there. This was his eyes and ears, and reporting back to him on all the information, obviously, that was going on during these early stages of this spy.
To the late stages. And then let's get to the late stages where Biden is in this Oval Office meeting that we referred to before, I believe, but we're not 100% sure which meeting this is, but we believe it is. The Oval Office meeting where they're plotting basically about briefing Trump. And then remember, Comey then uses the briefing, quote unquote, to really secretly feed what Trump says to the FBI fake investigation into Trump that Comey didn't even tell him about. So this now gets to Susan Rice being present as well. So Biden's in the room in the Oval Office for a conversation about the Russia probe. Susan Rice is in there, others, but it doesn't matter who else was there because Rice, Obama, Comey, Sally Yates, Biden, they're in there, they're discussing the Russia probe, and then this is why it's so relevant because that same meeting, Rice then goes and she writes this email to herself, which makes no sense, memorializing that conversation and then saying, quote, that this was by the book. And in fact, actually, she says more than once in her email to herself that the whole thing of the Russia probe, this conversation was by the book. What? And Chuck Grassley himself wrote a letter to Susan Rice explaining how weird this is, how odd it was that Susan Rice would do this. In fact, let me read to you Grassley's letter. And again, Biden was present in this briefing, which is why I'm focusing on it. Quote, it strikes us as odd that among your activities in the final moments of the final day of the Obama administration, you would feel the need to send yourself such an unusual email purporting to document a conversation involving President Obama and his interactions with the FBI regarding Trump and Russia. Now, this email is basically Rice trying to cover her tracks. But remember, Joe Biden was present in there, so he's also covering, she's also covering his tracks. So is this going to be a theme in 2020? Let's see. But I want to move on from this to the actual memos that Comey wrote that were then classified by the FBI. Now, when you think about this, okay, classified by the FBI, Comey writes a memo, and then there's this like huge apparatus that decides whether each memo is classified. Nope. You are not going to believe, speaking of deep state, who literally classified Comey's memos and decided which ones were not classified. Well, I'm not going to give it away. I want Josh to do it. Joshua Klein of Breitbart and this radio show. Who classified, this is now in the Inspector General's report, who classified Comey's briefing memo?
Yeah, I mean, when I was going through the report, I mean, I literally had to read this twice because I was hallucinating when I read, this part of the report. This is literally the fox guarding the hen house. So now they have these memos that obviously were exposed, and, the media, Congress, everyone wants, to know about it. So it needs to go through a classification review, which of course it should have gone to before and not into Comey's, home safe. But that's a whole other story. So post facto, now literally the people that are doing the review are the same people that were in on the plotting of this. This was Baker, Lisa Page, and Peter Strzok. They were the ones that were doing the classification review of this memo. And again, it goes on, and I literally couldn't believe that I was reading this in the IG report. And they said, well, one of the reasons it gives them, credibility to do such a thing is that they have such great experience from, the Clinton investigation. I mean, this is crazy. They're using that as to legitimize their ability to do this. The same people that were, again, before this, they were in on this small group of people that Comey was debriefing these exact memos to. So now they are the ones that are going to decide on the classification, and that process itself, the IG then goes on to talk about the process of that classification. So don't forget about it, the insanity, obviously, of the people that are doing the classification, and now the way...
Oh, but don't forget that these are Page and Strzok, these are the lovers, these are the people who wrote text messages to each other about an insurance policy, and now we know what that insurance policy was. It was their entire Russia hoax. And then they also wrote, quote, "We'll stop it," meaning we'll stop Trump from becoming president. In fact, they were asked about that. So these are the lovers caught in anti-Trump text messages discussing an insurance policy against Trump. They're the ones who classified Comey's memos. Now, the actual process of classification, you would think that there are records of what happened inside these meetings between, and I can't believe that these are who did it, but between Baker, who was involved in this, Strzok, Page, another individual who was actually involved in the Hillary case. So they're all sitting there and meeting. Did they keep records of the meeting, of what took place while they're sitting there deciding allegedly what to classify?
No, so the IG actually highlights that. I mean, in the context of they were actually debating very heavily whether things should be classified. Apparently, it wasn't so clear cut. Everyone had different opinions, and there was a lot of back and forth. So this wasn't like a very simple process, and it's not complicated to do. Apparently, it was very complicated. There were divergent opinions. So one of the anomalies, of course, is that, of course, there were no notes taken. So there's no records of how they came to these decisions, who made them, and why. That's something that stands out as beyond strange. And then even further, when you do a classification review, one of the most important things is you have usually, it could be information that's from the State Department, it could be information from other intelligence agencies, the NSA, the Defense Department. So whenever you have, information that's from all these different, departments in the government, you're supposed to take that information to that institution. So let's say it was the State Department, you're supposed to give it to the State Department, and they're supposed to review it because they're the owners of the material. That's the term that they use, and they're the ones that usually make that determination. So for some reason, they wanted this done in a very quick fashion, so they decided to circumvent the normal process, and they're going to now rely on Page and Strzok and their expertise, because they have it from the Clinton investigation and the knowledge that they have and accumulated from, being able to determine classification levels for Hillary Clinton's emails, which had to do with the State Department. So clearly they're qualified, based on that, to make calls, beyond things that belong to the FBI, things that belong, obviously, to other departments.
So you couldn't make this stuff up. First, you have Comey briefing, quote-unquote, Trump, have somebody leaking it to the media, but now we know Comey was actually spying on Trump in there, passing the information to the FBI. And now, I also had to read this twice. Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, the lovers who had anti-Trump messages about an insurance policy within the FBI, they classified, or decided not to in some cases, and very lightly classified Comey's memos. Let's just wrap this all up next. Stay tuned.